Selena Gomez once said in an interview that people often think they know everything about her life just because they see headlines, pictures, or little clips online. But in reality, what the world sees is only a fraction of the whole story. And honestly, that line hit me so hard because it applies perfectly to what I'm about to share with you today. The situation I'm talking about is one of those things where on the surface, it looks like a straightforward wedding, the kind of event we've all attended at some point in our lives, but when you zoom in, when you really pay attention, it turns into something completely different. What should have been a happy moment of celebration, filled with laughter, dancing, and joy, became a stage where every emotion other than joy played out. And that's why Selena's words stuck with me, because just like her life is constantly dissected and judged, this wedding became less about love and more about performance, power, and the endless opinions of people who weren't even supposed to be part of the story. Now imagine this. Two people who are supposed to be in love, finally ready to tie the knot, finally ready to stand in front of everyone and say, "This is it, we choose each other." That should be simple, right? But the reality is that nothing about this was simple. From the very beginning, it felt like every decision was under a microscope. The guest list wasn't just a list, it was a test of loyalty. This seating arrangement wasn't just about comfort, it was a statement of who mattered more. The choice of venue, the colors, the music, all of it turned into weapons in this silent battle where the biggest question wasn't, what do we want for our wedding? But rather, who gets the final say? And the thing is, it wasn't just the bride and groom caught up in this. No, the families, the relatives, the so-called friends, even strangers online, everyone jumped in like they had a front row seat to the biggest drama of the year. What fascinated me the most is how quickly the spotlight shifted from the couple to everyone else around them. It wasn't about their happiness anymore, it was about appearances. It was about who looked good in photos, who stood where in videos, who spoke when, and who seemed to have the most influence in the whole production. It reminded me of the ways celebrity culture works. How Selena Gomez, for example, can post a picture of herself just sitting by the beach, and the internet turns it into a debate about her personal choices, her relationships, even her health. That's exactly what happened here. A private moment was hijacked by everyone else's interpretations, and the actual feelings of the couple got buried under layers of noise. And here's the irony. Weddings are supposed to be about unity, right? About bringing families together, about two people starting a new chapter as one. But what I saw unfold here was the complete opposite. Every choice turned into a tug of war. Families weren't coming together, they were pulling apart. Relatives weren't smiling with joy, they were whispering in corners, exchanging glances filled with judgment. Friends weren't just celebrating, they were taking sides. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the online audience jumped in too. Memes started spreading, clips were being shared, and suddenly this wasn't just a wedding. It was trending content. People who weren't even invited became part of the story. And the couple, the two people at the very center of it all, seemed to fade into the background. But maybe that's the strange reality of modern love stories. They aren't private anymore. They're public performances, whether we like it or not. And weddings, which used to be personal celebrations, have turned into full-blown productions. Just think about it. The dress, the decor, the choreography of the first dance, the perfect photos that need to be posted within minutes. It's all designed for an audience, not just for the couple. And when you design something for an audience, you start to lose a bit of authenticity. You start to perform instead of live. That's what I saw here. A wedding that was less about the actual marriage and more about the show surrounding it. Now let's talk about one of the biggest sparks of the drama, the guest list. You would think it's just names on a page, but in this case, it was the root of so many conflicts. People were offended if they weren't invited, and people were equally offended if someone else was. Suddenly, being on that list wasn't just about attending a wedding, it was about status, about being recognized, about being seen as important enough. And the couple? They were stuck in the middle, forced to play referees in a game that had nothing to do with them. But that's what happens when weddings stop being about love and start being about politics. Every name added or removed became a message, and messages can be misinterpreted, and believe me, they were. Then came the families, and oh boy, if you've ever seen families clash at a wedding, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The bride's side wanted one thing, the groom's side wanted another, and neither wanted to compromise. It stopped being about the couple's vision and started being about whose influence would dominate the day. I saw relatives who hadn't spoken in years suddenly inserting themselves into decisions. I saw people who were supposed to be supportive using the moment to settle old scores. It was messy, it was loud, and it was honestly exhausting just to watch. But here's the thing, as chaotic as it was also so real. Because, let's face it, weddings have a way of bringing out the best and the worst in people. They magnify emotions, they bring unresolved issues to the surface, and they expose the cracks that most families try to keep hidden. What struck me is how similar this all is to the way fans dissect Selena Gomez's life. Every move she makes, every friendship she keeps, every relationship she's in, it all becomes content for people to pick apart. The same way this wedding turned into a spectacle, Selena's life often becomes a storyline for people who don't even know her personally. And maybe that's the world we live in now, where nothing is truly private and every personal choice can be twisted into a public drama. But let me take you deeper into the vibe of that wedding. Normally, weddings are filled with excitement. People dance, they laugh, they cry happy tears, but this one had a different kind of energy. There were forced smiles, stiff conversations, and so much tension you could practically feel it in the air. The music played, but people weren't really dancing. The food was served, but no one seemed to enjoy it. The couple tried their best to keep the mood light, but their efforts kept getting drowned out by the politics swirling around them, and that made me wonder how much of the wedding did they actually enjoy. Did they have even a single moment to just look at each other and feel pure happiness? Or were they too busy managing everyone else's expectations? And that question kept bothering me because it ties back to the bigger picture. If the wedding itself becomes a battlefield, what does that say about the marriage that follows? Marriage is already hard enough on its own. It's about compromise, patience, and constant effort. But when the foundation is built on so much noise, when the very first day of that marriage is overshadowed by conflict, it makes you wonder what kind of scars that leaves behind. And that's not to say the marriage won't work, but it does make you think about how much energy was wasted on things that shouldn't have mattered in the first place. Still, there's something strangely beautiful about the messiness of it all, because in a way, it's a reminder that love stories are never as perfect as they look in movies or on Instagram. They're complicated, they're chaotic, and sometimes they're downright messy. But maybe that's what makes them real. The drama, the conflict, the imperfections, they're all part of the human experience. And as much as we might roll our eyes or laugh at the chaos, deep down we know that it's these very moments that make life interesting. So when I think back on this wedding, I don't just see the fights, the politics, or the drama. I see a story about two people trying to hold on to each other in the middle of a storm, a story about families who care too much and show it in the worst ways, a story about how in today's world, love isn't just between two people, it's between two people and everyone else who feels entitled to have a say. And maybe that's the lesson here. Love will always be tested, whether by families, by friends, or by the world watching from the outside. What matters is whether the couple can block out the noise and remember why they chose each other in the first place. And just like Selena Gomez once reminded her fans that the world will always have its opinions, maybe couples need to remind themselves of the same. People will talk, people will judge, people will turn your private moments into public debates. But at the end of the day, none of that matters if the love between you is strong enough to survive it. Because weddings may be performances, but marriages, real marriages, are lived off stage, away from the spotlight, in the quiet moments that no one else gets to see. At the end of the day, stories like this remind us that behind all the noise, the lights, and the drama, there are always real people with real feelings trying to find a little happiness for themselves, and that's something we can all relate to in our own ways. I really enjoyed sharing this with you, and I hope you enjoyed listening just as much. If you found this interesting or it gave you something to think about, make sure to support the channel by giving it a like, sharing it with others, and subscribing for more content like this.